Okay, hello and welcome to MASSCreative's second April Artivist Town Hall. I'm really delighted that we are joined by Chair Garballey, who is the House Chair of Tourism Ways and, excuse me, of the Tourism Arts and Cultural Development Committee, although I do think having a Tourism Ways and Means Committee would be fun too. But thank you, Chair, for joining us today. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone, if you don't mind, microphones off so that we don't have interference. If you feel so inclined, we love it when you introduce your chat so we know who's all is here. Feel free to share your name, your pronouns, where you are zooming in from Commonwealth, and how you fit in the arts and cultural sector. Whether you're an artist, an arts and culture bearer, a creative small business, always great to understand that too. Um, so without further ado, Chair, thanks for joining us today. We have been in the House, we have been blessed with a series of really great chairs who have worked in partnership with advocates around issues related to the arts and cultural sector. So we're really glad you were appointed chair this session. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into public service?
Great, great. Emily, thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me. And thank you to all the folks at MASSCreative and all the advocates on the Zoom call. I hope we can get together in person soon. I'm Sean Garballey, so I'm the state representative from the town of Arlington. It's for being in the House of Representatives that I was appointed to back in the early days was this committee. So I am well acquainted with the importance of the committee, what it stands for, and the opportunities that can come from this committee to strengthen the creative sector across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I'm really excited to have this committee. I'm the son of an artist. And my dad was a college art professor for over 30 years at a private college, Butera School of Art, right in downtown Boston. And so growing up, art was always injected in my being, if you will. He did a lot of sign painting, gold leaf lettering, and I remember being woken up when I was, 9 years old, 8 years old, at 5 in the morning to get down to the boat dock and to start lettering a boat or a truck or a billboard, or the parquet of the Boston Celtics or an old car. So art and the appreciation for the arts and what it means to this Commonwealth has always been ingrained in my very soul, if you will. I'm adopted, so I didn't inherit any of the talent genes that my dad had. But certainly, in terms of being the strongest advocate I can be for a thriving and strong creative sector here across the Commonwealth is very, very important to me, both when it comes to the budget and what we can do to support, but also when it comes to policy and trying to make sure that Massachusetts stands at the forefront for adopting policy that only strengthens that creative sector.
Well, that is great. Thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself. And I can't wait. I want to go with you and see some of your father's work and see some of your work in that lettering. That'd be fun to see it pointed out. So we earlier this month, Chair Mark joined us, and he talked a little bit about his view and vision of what the role of a committee plays in the legislative process. And so we'd love to hear your perspective on that. Like, what is the committee and why does it matter?
Right. Senator Mark is a good friend, so we're really looking forward for a strong partnership with the state Senate in hearing these bills and really moving forward on doing a really deep dive into every bill that has been referred to our committee. So for the past 4 years, I have served as the chair of the Global Warming and Climate Change Committee. So this is as was said earlier by Emily, this is the first time that I have had the honor of chairing this committee. And I'm happy to say the clerk of the House of Representatives has just referred all of the bills that are being referred to the Committee on Tourism and Arts and Cultural Development to us. So we have them. We've already been taking a deep dive into understanding what each bill means, what the goal of the legislator who filed the bill is trying to get at. And we are in the middle of setting up public hearings on each bill that has been filed. So to put in perspective, 7,000 bills get filed every 2 years by members of the House and the Senate. It might be a little more, it might be a little less, but once they are filed, they have 2 years, a 2-year opportunity for each bill to either get passed or put into study. And if a bill is not passed, meaning, it doesn't get passed by the House, passed by the Senate, and sent to Governor Healey's desk for signature, then the bill unfortunately dies. Well, depending what the bill is. So we have a 2-year window, less than 2 years, obviously, now to be able to get it passed. And so we really have until a year from July 31st of this year to get all bills passed and sent to the governor's desk. So basically, the clerk looks at every bill and then gives it a bill number and refers it to the content committee of where the bill should go. So we get all creative sector related bills, we get library bills, anything that is under the definition of tourism, arts, and cultural development, including libraries, ends up in our committee. And that's important because under the Constitution, every piece of legislation that comes before us, any committee, has to have a public hearing. And that gives the public the opportunity to come before us. And it's a joint committee, so members of the House and members of the Senate of the Tourism, Arts, Cultural Development Committee, and tell us what you think about the bill. Are you supportive? Are you opposed to it? Do you have concerns, unintended consequences? Do you think the bill, you like parts of it, but you think, other things can be done within the bill to make it stronger? Or, this is your opportunity to share your perspective on the bill. And then we take all of that. And, you don't just have to come in person. You can also come remote. You can also do written testimony. I will hear from anybody across our incredible state if they care about a bill that is before our committee. And I know this Zoom is filled with talented artists who care very much about this sector and care about the future of Massachusetts. So I want to hear from anybody and everybody who cares about arts and culture about a particular bill that is before our committee. So to me, that's really, really important and a really important part of the committee. Another part of the committee, Emily, beyond just hearing, so obviously, hearing, allowing people to come and testify about a bill, and then we take all that feedback and we take that into deep consideration when we decide what to do with that bill, whether to report it out favorably, for it to continue on the legislative journey of trying to make it to the floor of the House or the Senate and to Governor Healey's desk, or maybe that bill needs a little more work, so we send it to study. But we take all of your feedback in deep consideration. The other part that I think is really important in this committee and being able to work closely with Chair Paul Mark and the Vice Chair on the House side is Steve Owens and the other members of the committee, is to really expose the members to art and culture and why we are so invested in this industry in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, why it only strengthens our standing as a Commonwealth. So we will be visiting many sites across the Commonwealth to try to give the committee members that perspective. And so that's another part of what we will be doing as a committee. So I'm really excited to get started.
Thank you for that insight. And it is so great to have champions, especially you and Chair Mark, who are helping connect members of the legislature with the impact that arts and culture and the people who make art and culture play in each one of our districts, which is really great. Thank you also for highlighting the real role that advocates and constituents have in the lawmaking process. I think oftentimes it can feel really remote and it can really feel like, oh, there's not a whole lot I can do about it. And so I really appreciate you reminding all of us on this call that the hearing process is literally designed to make sure that constituents have a voice and a perspective when laws are being made. So thank you for lifting that up. I
Emily,
want
I would just add to that, Emily. I know everyone on this call, you have full-time jobs, you have childcare duties. Maybe you can't make it to a hearing. Maybe you can't join us virtually. So I would encourage you, if you have a strong feeling about a bill we're considering, is put your thoughts and ideas on paper. We look at everything, and that's another great opportunity to have your voice be heard.
Thank you for pointing that out. And just as a reminder for folks, MassCreative has some resources to help you write testimony. That's what it's called, written testimony, to help you think about how to, what's the format, what are some talking points you can use. And as we continue through the legislative process, we will be sure to share that out so you have that tool. So today is an especially interesting day, right? About an hour ago, I believe the House Ways and Means released their version of the budget. And for those of you on the call, this is, I would say, the next biggest step in the budget process after the governor filing her version of the budget, which happened in January. So now that the House Ways and Means budget is out, that means some work, right, for all the legislators. Chair, would you mind just sharing a little bit about what's sort of happening or what's going to happen in the next couple of days?
Absolutely, Emily. So, as Emily just articulated, the House Ways and Means budget for FY26 just came out about a little less than 2 hours ago, and we are going through every line item, what it means, what areas were better than the governor's FY26 budget, what was worse, and trying to go from there. And members of the House have until Friday at 5 p.m. to file amendments to the FY26 House budget. And then, next week is school vacation. So the Monday after, we will begin the debate on the House budget. And I have good news. So the Mass Cultural Council was funded at the same level that the governor funded MCC for the FY26, which is a nominal increase from last year's budget. So it's a great starting point, especially when you take into consideration the disaster that we currently have in Washington, D.C., and how that is negatively impacting our budget here in Massachusetts. As many of you know, we really depend on tax revenues. We can't deficit spend. So capital gains tax revenue, they are very critical for forming this budget. And any discussions in Washington around tariffs are having a disastrous impact on our revenue numbers. But fortunately, we were able to hold the line, at least with MCC and the importance of it. So I'm happy about that. And we're going to have a bunch of calls with advocates in terms of how to move forward. Certainly I have always believed that we need to invest more in arts and culture. I think we all believe that on the call, but certainly trying to decide how to be successful in that endeavor. But we did get some good news.
Thanks for pointing that out. One of the things that we've been talking with advocates a lot is that this is a really tough budget year. And from my perspective and from MASSCreative's perspective, it's feeling a lot like the 2020 budget process, right? When there were so many things that were up in the air. First of all, it is amazing to see that thanks to folks, legislators in the building who already understand the importance of arts, culture, and creativity, and the work that we are doing collectively as advocates to lift up and to share out our impact. That's we're seeing that in the fact that there was no cuts to the Mass Cultural Council's budget. And as another reminder for folks, the Mass Cultural Council's budget is the largest state public investment in arts and culture, annually. So they are charged with distributing that money throughout the sector. So this is really good news. And yes, we also do share your feeling, Chair, that we should invest more, but being thoughtful and strategic is always the name of the game in this moment. So thanks for giving us a little bit more insight. Um, what's really good news is that the week that the House will be debating the budget is also the week of Creative Sector Day at the State House. And I want to thank you, Chair, for being one of the co-hosts and co-sponsors of that event. Would you mind sharing a little bit around what is helpful? I mean, we actually have over we have over 300 people who've registered for the event to come to the State House. And so we're gonna have a lot of folks, right? And we have tools and resources available for you all on our website to think about how you can make a meeting with your lawmaker, how you can talk about the issues. But from your perspective as an elected official, could you share a little bit about what's helpful when an advocate comes to talk to you about an issue that they're passionate about?
Well, it's a great question, Emily. Well, first of all, whenever a constituent comes to see me, I consider it a good day, right? For a constituent who cares about an issue so much that they want to come see me, they want to call me, they want to email me, and that's critically important in my perspective on how I make decisions and how I go about my work in terms of prioritizing certain things, like when it comes to legislation, and when it comes to budget numbers. My first advice is to just be you. You are the experts in the mass creative sector here in the Commonwealth. So if you're coming to see me or you're going to see your state rep or your state senator, share your story. Share how you love doing what you do, that the grant you get from MCC or the other funding that you get is critically important to allow you to continue to do it. Um, you can make a script if that makes you comfortable. I know approaching your lawmaker isn't always the easiest thing to do, right? It can be challenging. Maybe that's not something you're super comfortable with. But I'll tell you what I love. I just love it when people come to me and share their story. You
Right.
know, you are the experts. You're educating us in this field. Not every rep or senator is going to know everything there is about arts and culture across Massachusetts. So it's your opportunity to educate them on it. And because many of you, have such experience in the field, you're going to be able to really give that perspective, which I think is going to be really, really helpful for your lawmaker to become more knowledgeable in this space. And at the same time, because of your ability to educate your lawmaker hopefully will be able to become a better champion, a better spokesperson for the importance of the creative economy here in Massachusetts. So I would say just be yourself. Um, and your lawmaker is happy to see you. I would also say, sometimes your lawmaker might not even be in the building that day. Sometimes our calendars can fill up 6 months in advance. So you may be sitting down with a staff person. Don't be disappointed with that. Our staff people work really, really hard. And we, as lawmakers, really count on their wisdom and their support and education on a specific item. So if you're sitting down with a staff person, if your lawmaker can't make it that day, that's okay. What you could say too to the staff person is, I'd really love to talk to the rep or the senator at some point. Can we set up a time for a phone call? Or, maybe go meet them at their office hours at another time? I think that is something that you can absolutely do.
Awesome. Thank you for so eloquently or elegantly segueing into my next question, which was actually about the role of staff, right? So I think again, folks walk into, as you pointed out, oftentimes folks will say, I want to meet with my elected official, and they'll come to the office and discover that they're meeting with staff. And I will say for all of you, there right now are folks on this call who are current or former staff for legislators in the building and are some of the most knowledgeable and effective advocates that we have working on our issues. So you talked a little bit about the role of a staff member, but would you mind just sort of expanding a little bit out more about what's the role that they play in policy development as to support you and then working with advocates?
That's a great question, Emily. So, I would say everyone uses their staff a little different, right? We're all 160 or 200 legislators are all very different people from one another. But I can tell you when I start my day and I come into the office, and because I live in Arlington, I live very close to the State House, so I'm here usually at least 4 days a week. When I come to the office, I immediately sit down with my staff and go over, what are we dealing with? Like what constituents have reached out to us? What are the issues? What are things that I should know? They really do a rundown on everything, that is happening. And, Derek is my staff person for the committee, and I do the same thing with him for all the committee work. And so I really count on my staff. We joke, staff keeps all of us on the narrow, straight and narrow, so we don't screw up. And there's a lot of truth to that. But I also count on them when it comes to how I prioritize my time in terms of, they know what bills I prioritize. They know what I'm passionate about in terms of what I'm specifically working on, and they help me in terms of guiding me on how I prioritize and spend my time. So if someone comes in here and they're, rude and a jerk to my staff, they're probably not going to put that in front of me. So, I do recognize that, sometimes it can be disappointing to come into an office and, the legislator isn't there because you've put it in your mind that you really want to meet with your lawmaker. I count on my staff more than anything. And they certainly help me and are my eyes and ears on everything that I deal with. So they are in many ways a part of me and definitely a part of my team. So, when they meet with a constituent or an advocate, I'm certainly going to take their feedback on how the meeting went, really importantly, in terms of how I approach something. But I would say, Emily, I don't think it's beyond out of line to say, at the end of the meeting, hey, it's been great meeting you. Thank you for your time and everything you've done. But I would love to talk to the rep or the senator at some point if that's possible. And it
Great,
should.
thanks. That's a really helpful hint or tip. So you just mentioned something, and I think oftentimes when we engage with our elected officials, we're always focused on like our priority, right? Like we want to be there, we're advocating for the arts, or we're advocating for something that's really specific to the creative sector. And I think sometimes we forget that like we're all well-rounded people. And you mentioned something, Chair, about your other priority areas. And I would you mind just sharing, for you representing your district, what are the things that you are particularly prioritizing this session related to either issues or pieces of legislation that maybe are outside of the realm of arts, culture, and tourism?
Sure. Well, I think we all know that we just don't live in silos, right? Um, Many of you, you're artists who care about the creative economy, but maybe you also care about childcare, right? Maybe you care about the affordability of public higher education because in order to move forward in your career. You also have to have a strong foundation, and a community college or a state university or UMass provides that. Um, we all live on this planet. We care about clean water, you know, breathable air, right? So, um, I understand that people on this call, you care about a whole host of issues, not just arts and culture, but it all goes hand in hand. For me, I really prioritize on vulnerable populations. So I really spend most of my time when I talk about my own policy agenda on things like improving the life for those with disabilities, mental health concerns, um, people who are homeless, um, people who are recently incarcerated.
Mhm.
Massachusetts does best when we have supports and services and safety nets for the most vulnerable among us. And we do our worst when those safety nets are cut.
Mhm.
And so I spend a lot of my time in making sure those safety nets are preserved as much as possible. And I view arts and culture as a really critical component of that when you talk about opening the doors of art and the creative sector for people with disabilities, for people with mental health needs that continue to go unaddressed, right? Like these are
Mhm.
critically important. So these are some of the issues that I work on. Beyond that, obviously, as I said earlier, I was the chair of the climate change committee for 4 years. So obviously, renewable energy and having a sustainable planet is certainly something that is critically important to me. And I know it's important to artists across our state as well.
Thank you. Thanks for that insight. That is, and thank you for doing the work. The comment I was going to make, which is to say, like, the arts and cultural community weaves into all of those issues. So it's good to have a chair who understands that already. So the only question that was submitted by folks who registered was, how can we help you? And so I think you've already touched on a couple of those items, but it would be really great as a sort of a wrap-up question. What else can we do, or what's really helpful for you as advocates for an issue?
That's a loaded question, Emily, but certainly an important question. Um, you know, Creating a relationship with your lawmaker is really, really important for a whole host of reasons. You know, Not just to, tell your lawmaker, support this, support that, but creating a relationship with your lawmaker helps long term too, because whenever an issue comes up that you care about, you can just pick up the phone or shoot a text or, send an email and say to your lawmaker, hey, this is really, really important to me. And when they get a message, from anyone on this call and they say, oh, Kathy is reaching out to me or Lori, and they already have that relationship with that lawmaker, so they know that that is coming from a confidant, a trusted source um, of one of their constituents. So, what would certainly be helpful for me is if everyone on this call works to create that relationship as best as you can with your lawmaker. Because when issues around the creative sector come up, whether it's policy or budget, and you're able to reach out as a constituent to your lawmaker, to have your lawmaker make it a priority because of you, that certainly makes my job a little easier, but also um, it makes your job easier as an advocate too, because the success rate is probably going to go up because of that personal relationship that you have fostered and created with your lawmaker. And I recognize, sometimes we're not always going to be successful in being able to advocate, but we just keep trying. We keep at it, right?
Yes, it is. This all, to use a cliche, is a marathon, not a sprint. So, we are very lucky that you are in this race with us, to extend that metaphor a little bit farther. I want to thank you for your time today and for answering candidly questions that are really going to help us as advocates be more effective and feel more confident. And we're really glad that we'll all be in the building on April 30th to celebrate the impact and the contributions of artists, creatives, cultural organizations, creative small businesses to the Commonwealth. So thank you so much, Chair. Have a wonderful day, and thank you all for joining us for this call.
Emily, no one else has any questions? I know only
Oh,
one was submitted, but if anyone had any questions, I'm happy to take it.
we will do that now. If you want to enter your question into the chat, or you can raise your hand and come off mute, the chair will take questions.
And if not, that's okay. I'm here. I'm all, oh, there, I see one from,
Catherine, thanks for joining us.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate this. This was incredibly informative. So thank you for your time. I had a question that you kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but it's the idea of like, as somebody who's really passionate about wanting to advocate for something, and this will be the first time that I'm going to the State House to kind of like give materials to anyone who might need it. Um, when is it too much information? Because I feel like there's a lot of like there are certain issues I care about, like generative AI, and I know that there's a framework for like we have to start somewhere on the education of kind of like a 101 first before I jump into like, and then these are all the policies I think we could do to like support this effort. So I'm kind of curious, like where, especially because we're starting a relationship at the beginning, like when it feels like too much of a, to kind of do a weird metaphor of like, here's some information, will you marry me? Versus like, oh, it's nice to meet you. Like, let's have some coffee first. Like, so I'm just kind of curious where, from a, like a material standpoint, it feels like if I'm coming to bring some information to you or to other representatives, like, when is it too much or like it's a turnoff rather than a like introduction and build a relationship?
it's a great question. And, I might not have all the answers. So, use your own discretion, but also what you feel most comfortable with. Um, I would advise that when you come to see your lawmaker, if you try to throw like 10 issues at them, like that might be too much, right? But I think you can do more than one or two, right? I really believe in creating that relationship with your lawmaker. And then think about, what is a top priority for you, whether it be two priorities or three priorities. You can always educate them on the other things you care about later. But if you are sitting down with them, or if it's your first time, maybe not, you know, um, throw like 10 different things at them. This is your lawmaker. If you want to do that, you absolutely can. But in terms of um, trying to create a champion in your lawmaker and trying to get your lawmaker to say, you know what, I really want to work on this issue. I think it is better, at least in the beginning, to try to pick like what the issues are, your top priorities. And then later on, once you've created that relationship with your lawmaker, you know, um, I think then you can certainly talk, about other issues that you care about to that lawmaker. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, that's really clear. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that at least would be my advice. Now, I do have constituents that, send me 10 emails, a week on different things. I don't boycott those people. I still love to hear from them.
Mhm.
But in terms of my bandwidth and what I can really focus on and be successful in, I just can't do, 10 issues every day, right? I
For
try to
sure.
really focus my attention. Um, so if you really kind of focus on two or three things that you really care about, and maybe in that conversation, it'll morph to more things you care about.
Right.
Um, but the goal is to really set the foundation and that relationship that will allow for a real fruitful relationship between you as an advocate and your lawmaker for years to come on various issues. That's the goal.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, because I think similar to what Emily said before, like it's I think it's very easy for us artists to kind of like see all the threads of connection between things and be like, well, I want to focus on that too and that too. So helping to reel it in is very useful. Yeah. So thank you.
Great.
Any other questions?
Well, you can certainly email me. If you do have questions, we can put it in the chat. But really looking forward to seeing everybody next week, and really excited for the work of the committee.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. And thank you all for joining us today, and taking time out of your day for this important conversation and the start of a lot of more conversations.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
time.
everybody.